So I've never shared my full story before, but today I'm going to walk you guys through different parts of my life that helped me go from where I was to becoming a man that wants to be a guardian, a protector, a warrior for other men, and teaching them how to do the same. So my family background, grew up with, when I was younger, with my mom and dad, and had my brother and my sister. And growing up, we had a lot of different challenges that we had to grow up with. One of them was a financial challenge. There was never enough money, but I dealt with everything from physical abuse, sexual abuse as a child. Learning how to overcome those things is obviously challenging, as most of you know. Like I typically will tell the story about me having a knife to my throat when I was about 5-6 years old. I remember being young. It was the middle of the night, and I guess I was snoring or something, and this individual that was living with us, they're bigger than me and stronger than me, cover my mouth, smack me in the face, pin me down on the ground with their knees. And this specific time, this individual, when they woke me up, they went to the kitchen and they got a knife, put it to my throat. He said he was going to slit my throat and stuff my body behind the television so my family couldn't find me. And that was one of the first experiences that I actually really started to awaken to what it feels like to truly be helpless and to be weak and not have enough power or strength to be able to defend yourself and protect yourself against somebody bigger than you. I remember there was me, there was that individual, and I could feel the presence of death. I thought I was going to die that day. All I knew is that shortly after that, I felt the presence of the Lord. And for whatever reason, this individual didn't end up cutting my throat. But that led to a lot of trauma in my life. It led to me learning how to cope differently, especially at an early age. It put me in a position where I started to kind of lose it a little bit as a kid. I was trying to control whatever I could, but I didn't have the words to say in order to explain how I felt or to articulate it. Felt like it was going insane. I ended up getting a real hard situation of obsessive compulsive disorder where I had to count all of the dots on the ceiling. I had to wash my hands millions of times a day because I always felt so dirty. My mindset wasn't in a good place. Pain was the only way I could get myself out of my head, and I ended up channeling that in a really negative and unhealthy way, from hurting myself to you name it, right? Like, because you're a kid, you don't know any better. And back then, therapy and counseling, it's not what it is now. So it wasn't like you went and talked to a counselor. So a lot of that stuff I had to learn to cope through. And what it did is it helped me in my martial arts, because through martial arts, that's the only way I could express what I felt. It was through the movements, not the words. So I was able to take a feeling and like put it into a movement, and that helped me channel different things that I was dealing with. The physical abuse growing up as a kid was always a tough thing, but again, it taught me that I could move past it, that my mind was more powerful than the pain. And I think that's something that a lot of young men need to learn nowadays, is how to actually move through pain. And not just young men, but men as a whole, that they can overcome limiting beliefs, self-doubt, fear. It's part of the core fundamental that I operate on inside of my structure and what I teach men. You've got to become a person who is fearless to some extent. Fear is going to be present, but you got to be able to act in spite of it. You need to learn how to be resourceful. You have to have a decisive nature in what you do. You want to have a leverage of eldership and coaching, where you can actually give the knowledge from your pain to other people so that they don't have to spend as much time in it. And those are some of the elements that I took from that one experience.
So how did the impact of having that event happen at a young age direct, I guess, your decision making and mindset for what you wanted to pursue as you aged and got older?
It changed everything in my life, because you start realizing when something like that happens to you that there's things in life that are worse than death. It's living with that. And so it builds a level of conviction in you that you're willing to die versus allow something to happen to you again. And when you think about that and you go, man, I'd rather die than live through something, you have a level of conviction, both in business, in fighting, in relationships, everything, that shifts your perspective. But you have to learn how to reinvent yourself, because you actually don't have an identity, because you never knew who you were. The blessing in that is that I learned that I am whoever I say I am, and I can become whoever I say I am, because God created me in His image, and I'm capable and powerful enough to design whatever identity I want. As long as my behaviors and my daily actions embody that, I can actually conquer and overcome any self-limiting belief, self-doubt, anything of pain.
How did the environment of, the family that you were in and raised in have, obviously you've explained some of the impact, but what did it do to your family? What did it do to your mindset?
What it did to my family was it destroyed my family. It ripped my family apart, and I had to carry that guilt with me for a long time, and it felt shameful because I, as a kid, always kind of felt like it was my fault that my family got ripped apart. And there was a part of it where these events are happening, things are happening to you, and you're like, do I keep this to myself? But I know it's wrong. I don't have the strength to protect myself. And then you feel guilt for confessing these things and bringing them forward because it tears everything apart. So when you sit down and you try to focus on what's the reality of the impact that this had, it changed everything. And as I got older, I started realizing that this is probably part of the divine plan. It's through that type of pressure and pain of having a traumatic event like that happen that you change who you are as a man so that you can survive and you don't kill yourself and take yourself out. It puts you in a whirlwind and it starts to spin you. Mom ends up marrying this guy who is kind of a nut job, and he ends up threatening to kill us all in our sleep. And that was part of something where, again, as a young man, 12, 13 years old, I had to start figuring out how do I beat somebody bigger and stronger than me. I was only like 5'7", maybe 135 pounds. And this ass hat was like 240 pounds, 6 foot. But it also taught me how to create improvised weapons. I used to imagine where he was. I'd watch him when he'd come in my room at night or during the day, and it was normal, so I knew where his head level was, and I'd practice bouncing out of bed and striking with my knife right at that area, so in case I was in the dark, I could kill him if he tried coming in the room. Like, I didn't have the mindset of most kids.
How old were you when that was the case?
12.
12,
13 years old. So when you grow up in an environment where your safety constantly feels threatened, you're going to start functioning at a different level emotionally, and that can also be destructive in relationships, obviously.
Yeah.
But it changes your identity to be somebody that's willing to die versus live with something that you don't want to live with.
Touch on some of the upside that brought and also some of the downside.
Well, I touched on the downside. The downside is
Ripping family apart.
it rips family apart, right? Your mindset as a person in relationships, you have to really watch that because it can put you in a state where you're always trying to make sure you're safe and protected. And as a man, part of our job is to make sure that our woman and our children feel safe and protected. And you have these subconscious levels to you that you're not even aware of that start to activate whenever you feel threatened by anything, whether it's your woman or your kids, and then you go into the survival mode. And if you're not aware that that exists, it can destroy that relationship. And so you really have to put a governor on that. The other thing that I would say is good about it is that it gives you a level of conviction. I think a lot of people, they talk about their mission, they talk about what they want to do in life, but they forget that conviction is one of the most powerful things that fuels you. You know, if a car falls on a husband and a wife is sitting there, she'll lift that car off that husband. That's not based on her strength, that's based on conviction. Conviction taps into a different dimension and gives you superhuman strength and intentionality so you can push through things and do things that 90% of people on the planet can't do or won't do because they're not driven enough. When people say, oh, I really want this, we were talking about this last night in this seminar that we're teaching today, where people go, I want something. Do you though? Because if you really wanted it, you get it. The reality is you don't have enough conviction, you don't have enough drive. And so you're creating something to pretend that it has power because it sounds good, but in your heart, you're not driven enough. So you got to find a cause worth dying for to find a life worth living.
Yeah. What are some other close to death experiences that shaped your future and the way that you go about things?
There were a few, I'll start with one that was when I was in high school. My mom didn't have a lot of money, and so she was trying to pay bills. And I was always, hitting walls and stuff as a kid. And some kids saw me and they had underground fights in high school. They said, hey, if you want to fight, we all pull money in and we throw it together. You can fight, and if you fight, you get to keep the pool if you win. And I figured this would be a great way to help my mom pay the bills, so I did it. And there was a part where I was fighting the kid, and I had a position where I actually could have killed him, and something told me not to. And if I had done that, I would have been in prison for the rest of my life. The second part of that same story is he ended up in urgent care for almost a month after that fight, and it kind of it made my heart hurt because I figured out I can hurt another human being very badly. But at the same time, it gave me a level of confidence within myself. And for somebody who most of my life I felt afraid and vulnerable, for the first time in my life, I realized I was dangerous. And as a man, as a young man, that was my maturity. Then I'd say probably right after that, another life-threatening situation that I was in was getting hit by a car head on by a young lady that wasn't paying attention. She was on her phone. As I'm flying over her car, everything slows down. I hear this calm and authoritative voice that wasn't my own. And it said, "It's not your time, guard your head." And I should have been killed, right? I was going faster than most people that wouldn't have been killed. I wasn't wearing a helmet. And I got up and walked away. And the Lord protected me and kept me safe. And it taught me a couple of things. One, all of us have a time. So many people are so scared to live life. They're like, I gotta be careful, I could die. When it's your time to die, you're gonna die. There's nothing on earth that can keep you here longer, and there's nothing here that can take you before your time. Every man, woman, and child has a time. So live your life to the fullest every single day, because God is gonna take you and he's gonna utilize that time. If you choose not to live it because you're trying to be careful, you're wasting the time God gave you. You actually have to go out there and get it. Number two, it taught me that I have a purpose on this earth and a mission, and God's not done with me yet. So like when I got hit by a car, I started doing the underground fights against these guys. We fought with sticks and chains and bullwhips and all that good jazz. And people are like, doesn't it hurt? It didn't hurt as much as getting hit by a car, right? So like the pain tolerance is what you've been through and what you've accomplished. So you've always got to expose yourself to uncomfortableness so that you can increase and inoculate yourself to pain. Because if you don't, somebody else is going to do it for you. So you either choose your pain or it gets chosen on you. A painful life is actually a good life. It teaches you to be more than you think you can be. It shows you that you have different pressure tolerances and pain tolerances. And so you don't give up because you can't give up. And every time that you move from one point to the next, that becomes your new pain threshold. Shortly after that time frame, I ended up being homeless. I moved to Florida and ended up homeless, living in and out of my car. That was kind of a very interesting scenario also. I didn't have enough money for food, but I did have an ice chest. Florida's hot, so ice doesn't last long. And so my sister would send me these Subway sandwich food stamps that one of her friends would give her. She'd mail them to me because she was paying for me to have a post office box. And I finally ended up getting a 150 square foot apartment. From that 150 square foot apartment, I had my ice chest. I had a beach chair with plastic straps on it that I bought from a place out there called Publix. And that was my desk. And I'd sit there every day with my laptop and start working on this company called Shockwave Defense that I started building on February 5th, 2002 back in New Mexico. And I could only sit down for about 10-15 minutes at a time because it was cutting off the blood circulation to my feet. I just kept working and building it. I built it up, moved back to New Mexico, took out a loan from a friend that you don't not pay back, and had a pastor who gave me a building and said, hey, you can do this. So I took that $6,000, I put it in there and started recruiting students. And about 2.5 months into it, the pastor comes to me and says, hey, listen, you got to get out or you got to take over the whole building. And I just used all that money and I had to pay back. So I'm sitting down going, all right, well, that's not good. So everybody's telling me I can sue him because he breached the lease. In my heart, I was like, I'm not suing. Like, I don't sue God's people. So I turned it over to the Lord. Ended up walking into a place that I didn't think I could afford, and met with the leaser. I said, hey, I just need to know what it's like to rent downstairs, because part of me didn't want to go in. I sat down and thought, yeah, I can't afford it. I thought, well, that's stupid. You don't even know if you can afford it or not. You didn't ask. And the answer is no if you don't. So I decided to go in, and the guy knew me. He goes, you know what, I've actually been wanting to train with you for a while because I heard about you. And he goes, hey, so how much are your rates? And again, I don't even know where this came from. I was like, it's $3,000 a month a person. He's all, well, cool. Well, I had a good year. I have a buddy that would like to train. Would you be willing to do it for $3,000 for the two of us? We'll meet with you once a week, and I can pay you about 4 or 5 months in advance. And I would, dude, this is how you know that just God's looking out for you, because I didn't have money and I need to pay some people back, right? Yeah. So like I walk out of there and I'm like, thank you, God. You know? And I go back inside and I sit down, I'm like, yeah, I think I can do that for you. Taught him his first lesson that day. And that was one of the most powerful parts of our career. It projected us forward into a different stream. Now my buddy, he had helped me set that school up, and him and I had been friends since I think I was 6 and he was like 4 or 5. Saw each other every single month, with very few exceptions. And all of a sudden he was getting busy with his work, and I didn't hear from him for about a week, and I figured he just got busy. And then his girlfriend reached out to me and goes, hey, I haven't heard from Kyle. What happened? Have you heard from him? I just figured he was ignoring her because we like to have our own private time, right? Then his mom called me. I thought, that's weird. She's, oh, would you give Kyle a call? And I'm just focused on business, right? I'm trying to make my business fly. And I gave him a call as I promised I would. About 3 days later, His dad calls me and says, hey, I need you to go check on him. We haven't heard from him or seen from him. And so that, because his dad wasn't an emotional person to get worked up. So I go to his place, I'm looking around, he's like, check and see if there's a black box in there. And I'm looking around, trying to find this black box, I have no idea what's in it. And I said, it's not here, what is it? And he's all, it's the gun his mom got him for Christmas. So apparently what happened is he went, he took that gun, and he killed himself in the Jemez Mountains. And it destroyed his family, and it destroyed me. But one of the promises we'd always had with each other is if anything happened to either of us, we'd do our best to look out for the other's family. So I tried to stay really positive, and apparently it confused his family. His mom, she couldn't handle the fact that he killed himself with the gun she got him. So she actually tried blaming it on me and saying that she thought I killed him. And that devastated me. There's nothing that I would have ever not done for that guy. I loved him to death. And so when you talk about emotional impact, that hit me to the chest like a Mack truck, and I had to learn how to push through that. And as I kept going, it was just thing after thing. When I finally left the scenario, because I couldn't deal with my mom and stepdad anymore, I finally left. So my mom, she didn't handle it well. She decided to sue me for the knowledge in my head and said because I ascertained it while I was under her roof, it didn't belong to me. It was actually hers. And I shouldn't be able to train anywhere in the universe. So we end up in this ridiculous lawsuit. She takes my family's system and trademarks it. And so I had to restart. I had to restart from scratch. Everything I knew about fighting, everything I knew about martial arts, I had to start from the beginning. And I had to ask myself, if I were to restart and hack away everything that was unessential and unneeded, how would I do it? And so I got to rebuild my family's system from Jinseng Do Kung Fu to bellicosology, the study of militant martial and warfare ways, and start building out a system and an approach that would enable us and empower us to be able to teach people 10 times faster than any other martial art or approach out there. I was in New Mexico most of my life, and the market there for what I do and how I do it, it wasn't there. So I had to leave. And it got to a point that when my daughter got old enough that she wanted to live with her mother, that it didn't make a lot of sense for me to continue staying there. So that's when I moved to Arizona, because the market was bigger. And the hard part for a lot of people is that they're terrified to go into the unknown without already knowing what's going on, but that's the only way you grow. You can only be as big as the pond you're in. And if you want to get bigger, you've got to actually get into a bigger pond. You can't be afraid of the bigger fish. And that's where self-belief comes in, because I don't care what's out there. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to overcome it, to conquer it, to kill it. And that's that mindset, right? Like that's what I got from all these quote unquote traumatic experiences as a child. It gave me the tools that I needed to keep going, to keep pushing, to never give up, to not be afraid of death. What I'm afraid of is me never trying and not knowing what I could have done had I had the balls to go out and do it. And so coming to Arizona for me was the next level. And it was tough because I have a ton of connections in New Mexico. I know everybody out there. I came out here, I knew nobody. I didn't have that support structure. I didn't have the safety net. But I think that's what brings us up as men, is when we know there is no safety net. And when you can function in that pain and that fear, and you act in spite of it, you become 20 times more than what you were before. It's not a competition against other men, but the reality is it's a competition against yourself and how you get to the next level of you, so that everybody that comes against you is nothing more than just an obstacle. And the only real obstacles, if you think about it, are inside of you. They're the limiting beliefs, self-doubt, fears that you created. They're not even real.
And as you were like kind of coming up with your new business after the lawsuit with your mom, and you started seeing success in that business, how did the people around you treat you on the way up?
You'll find out who people are in your life when you start doing really bad or really good. As I started doing good, I started finding people that were trying to kind of jump in and have me drag them along with me. And then I also found out that there were friends that were almost upset with the success because me being weak gave them power over me. And for men, we don't understand that weakness is an illness. And you got infected by society, the proximity of people that you hang out with. They want to keep you weak. They want to keep you underneath them because that's how they control you. And so as people started seeing they couldn't control me, and they had very little power because now I was doing well, I had my own money, they started becoming like enemies and trying to make me doubt who I was and myself, and telling me it was wrong with me, and trying to make you feel like an imposter. And I think that, as a man, is one of the biggest struggles we face, is that imposter syndrome. We start going, man, am I real? Yeah. The realness isn't based on the people outside of you saying that you're real. The realness is based on you believing you can do it when everybody outside of you is saying you can't. And that's how you conquer imposter syndrome. Not by the world telling you and giving you validity, but you believing even when the world doubts and is shitting on you and they hate you. That's the conquering of imposter syndrome.
I want to talk a little bit more about the training that you were offering and what inspired the decision to start training others.
Okay. Pain. When you sit down and you focus on yourself and the pain you're going through, you infect yourself more with that pain. When you start taking on a mindset that everything you need is inside of you right now because you're made in the image of your creator, that God made you, you start realizing that just like the pain's inside of you, so are the answers. And so if you deep dive in, you get those answers. Now your job is to communicate that to other men, to other people. And that's what inspired me, because I found as I started helping them with the same problems I was going through and teaching them and coaching them through that on the things that worked for me, I actually not only helped them, but I felt better. I got to a point where I was feeling supercharged, and I was like, dude, now my pain, what used to be my pain, what used to be my sorrow, is my superpower. My ability to push through everything that hurts and face it and walk through it like the buffalo do a storm is what gives me the leverage to never back down. So that inspired me to do the initial part of what we used to do, which was primarily combatives. And as we did more of the combatives, I found that the men, they were so fascinated by the mindset. And I started having this awakening that there is no physical without the mind. So I was like, man, the real weapon is teaching people how to use their mind. So I started channeling and different branding on what we do with Shockwave Defense, and we kind of shifted over to the Shockwave Warrior, which is, how do you weaponize your mind? How do you take everything that Satan means for evil and channel it into something positive that God's given you for authority and power and his glorification of his kingdom, and take it to the next level? And so that's how we started doing it. We started focusing and shifting our approach, and now our approach became something stronger than just physical tactics. It became a powerful mindset.
You talked a lot about coaching for martial arts, but then you also have started coaching like men on just becoming better men as well. Talk a little bit about that and the inspiration behind it.
There's some men that have this very kind of egotistical approach where they like try to make fun of men that need coaching on how to be a man, but not everybody gets the opportunity to go train at camps or grow up a certain way and be forced, and they don't learn, and it's not their fault. And the only way to get past that and to heal and to get stronger is to expose yourself to things that make you uncomfortable, especially remembering what it was like when I was young and I didn't have a dad. I'm trying to figure out, man, how am I going to know how to be a man? How am I going to know how to be a good husband, a good father, a good leader? And I had the best father of all, because I remember I got down on my hands and knees and I just cried and I prayed to God and I said, how am I going to do this? I don't have a dad. Help me. And I opened my Bible, and it went exactly to the verse where it talked about God being the father to the fatherless. And I knew from that point forward, he was going to teach me how to be his man, a man of God, a man of action, and a man of deliberateness and intentionality. I think it's so important for us as men to help create that within each other. And that's why I coach it, because not only does it help other men around me, but it acts as a reminder, because I'm still human. I'm going to make mistakes. So it gives me the power and the reminder of what kind of man I need to be in order to get to the next level, to grow, to be better, to be stronger, to be a man of authority. And helping men get to their next level of their greatness also forces me to step up my game. A lot of guys, you see this in the martial arts a lot, and you see it in different ranks in the military, but you'll see these guys that get to a certain level and they're afraid of losing it. They think they hit the top. I'll never fall and hit the bottom, but I'll never hit the top either. Because when you do that, you think you've got a pass to quit growing. And that's when somebody else is going to come and take your lunch from you. So being at a point where I understand I'm good, I'm powerful in what I do because the Lord's blessed me, but there's always room for improvement. There's always room for growth. And some people will give you that knowledge, are your haters, and you're grateful for that. And other people will love you and they'll give that to you, but you want to pay attention to the people that stand by your side. What would I tell a younger version of myself when I was young and in a rough place? I think all men, we kind of worry about, am I going to find the right woman? Am I going to be a good man? Am I going to be a good father, a good husband? And what I would tell myself as a younger man is not to worry about that. God's got it.
I want you to talk about the importance of discovering yourself enough to realize that you're humble enough to go and ask for help and to grow. Because I think a lot of people you know, it's a comfort zone thing, and it's also an ego thing where they don't want to step out and they don't want to, you know, have help and spill their problems out and grow to the next level.
Arrogance will put you in the dirt. When you sit down and you are so prideful because you think you're so good that you can't ask for help, that's not really a thing of asking for help. It's the fact that you don't trust yourself to ask for help from the right people, because you've asked for help from the wrong people before and they ended up hurting you with what you asked them for help on. So a better way to look at that is to think, how can I build a system and a process that helps me ask for help from the right people and doesn't give them the ability to leverage that against me? Because as men, it's hard for us to ask for help because everything we do, especially now, it's all judged, right? We sit down and ask for help and then, oh, you didn't do it perfectly. Okay, but I didn't do everything wrong either. And for men, it's so easy for us to get caught up in the bullshit because we want to be the best version that we can be. And women know that. Other men know that. So you want to be able to surround yourself with men that are great, that challenge themselves, they push themselves, and they not only push themselves, but they push themselves to a level and they push you that helps you grow and you learn what your true nature is, what you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to become. Asking for help is a sign of strength for a man that's not insecure and looking bad. I went to a competition a little ways ago, and it was a pull-up competition, and the men are sitting there trying to do pull-ups, obviously to beat each other. And I could always tell when they were about to quit because they'd start looking at their muscles to see what they look like. And that's the sign of a quitter. And I don't care what I look like as long as I win. So asking for help is how you win. When you start to learn to not lean on your own understanding, but the understanding of God, and also realize that that understanding may come out of another man's mouth, then you can actually win. But when your arrogance takes over and your pride, you'll always try and do it your way. I'm telling you right now, that's going to be a painful thing for you, because you're going to end up losing it and you're going to be weak and you're going to fail and you won't be able to be the man God called you to be because you're too busy trying to look good. So your arrogance and your pride got in the way, and either way you're going to get humbled and you're not going to look good. So the best way to do that is to learn how to keep growing, keep pushing, surround yourself with men that are great, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
I think in today's society, masculine men are kind of silenced and it's pushed down by society, but I think it's more important than ever. What would you say to that?
I would say that masculine men are not silenced because we'll speak up anyway. Just learn how to do it differently so that they can't filter you and cancel you. Masculinity, you know, there's so many different guys trying to define that now. You got the red pill movement that's like shitting all over women as though they're evil. And I don't believe that. I don't think women are evil. I think they're meant to be led. And they're frail in a lot of aspects because of what other shitty men did to them. So when it comes up to us, we got to do the best we can. And also keep in mind, you're still going to make mistakes. So when you're trying to be masculine, do the best you can. Don't let them emasculate you, but also don't feel that you as a warrior and as a man, that you got to silence your tongue. Speak your mind. People are going to hate you either way. It wasn't until I started doing some videos that went viral that I actually realized when you get a lot of attention is when people talk the most shit. That's a gift. You want to learn to embrace that. And it's like, if people aren't trying to sue you, if people aren't talking shit, you're not going hard enough. You're not getting enough exposure. So your job is to get as many of those people as you can, because you're standing for something. Just know what it is that you stand for and fight all the way. So I help men become the most fearless version of themselves. And that means that they overcome limiting beliefs, self-doubt, and maybe it's not even that. Maybe they just want to level up and get to the next level. And the best way to do that is to challenge yourself to grow, to face things that make you uncomfortable, and to level up in such a way that it shocks the world. Now, if that's something that you want help with, I have multiple tools that'll help you do that. And all you have to do is click the link below.